Hello, everyone. Dr. Victoria Scarbo here, speaking to you from the Seeds of Transformation Healing Center in Wareham, Massachusetts. So it's time to look at the week ahead. This is going to be the week from Sunday, July 10th, which is today, until next Saturday, the 16th. There's a lot of stuff happening this week. There seems to be a lot of stuff happening every week. So let's get started with this. I'm going to share my screen with you, and then we're going to move into the slideshow. Okay, here we go. All right, so we are at I guess, officially second week. Maybe we could consider it the third week. It's hard to do it when weeks like are only half weeks, but we'll say from July 10th to July 16th. This is the astrology of this week, and of course, we do have to keep in mind the numerology as we sort of move through this period of time. Remember, we're in a 7-month. 7 is about introspection. It's about self-analysis. It is a month where we can be a little bit, say a little less, but think a whole lot more. We are in a 6 universal year, which is a vibration of responsibility and community and love and our ability to respond to the situation. Certainly, we've had a lot to respond to this month, this year, this decade. And then we add those 2 vibrations together and we get the 7 and 6, which is the 13 vibration, which is the death card in the tarot, which is associated with the sign of Scorpio, which of course we know the South Node is in Scorpio at this time, and prominent in the astrology of the moment and astrology of the time. And so we'll dive into it now. So the first thing that happens this week is the Sun sextile Uranus. This is part of a synodic cycle that began when the Sun and Uranus conjoined. That began on the 5th of May. That was the 5/5 portal. You can go back to look at my 5/5 portal reading to see what I said then. I don't remember everything that I said. So in that 5 is a number of freedom, but freedom based on responsibility. I know I said that because I always say that about 5. This is a time of opening the lines of communications on the seeds planted at that time. And it occurred at 15 degrees of Taurus, which is a very powerful degree of Taurus because it is a degree in which Uranus in Taurus has changed direction. And it is the middle of Taurus, so it is the most fixed degree of Taurus. And it is also at an evolutionary gateway if you look at the cycle of the lunation cycle. It's the point where we move from the new phase to the crescent phase. So we move from yang energy moving out to energy moving in, the yin phase. And so it is a highly, we'll call it stressed point to begin with, those middle degrees of the fixed signs. It's also one of the cross quarter days. And in that calendar, it would be a Beltane. But that was then. So that's sort of the energy that this was all fomenting on, right? And so we have the Sabian symbol for 15 degrees of Taurus, head covered with a rakish silk hat, muffled against the cold, a man braves a storm. The courage needed to meet the crisis precipitated by social ambition. Now, it's really hard for me to not connect this to, of course, the ridiculousness of the Republican Party, but especially of what happened with the Supreme Court, because the leaked opinion of them overturning Roe versus Wade, which they all swore they wouldn't do because it was stasis predecessor, or whatever the hell they called it. Uh, it was uh, it was established law as it was. They all lied through their teeth, and um, and so we're all sort of braving the storm that was created, right? And yet it's not just our storm, but it's their storm as well. When you take a stance like this at a time like this, when Uranus is in this degree, uh, you can't expect people to not be losing their freaking minds. And there's a lot of that in this week. But this is a sextile. So sextiles are not necessarily crisis producing. They open things up. They open up the conversation. And so we are having this very important conversation about freedom, Uranus, and the sun, which is who we are, our personal freedom, our personal freedoms. And of course, Taurus is an earth sign, which is Earth is a feminine element, and it is a Venus ruled sign. So Venus is very prominent in this whole energy that we're going through. Remember, at the beginning of the year, Venus started the year retrograde in Capricorn, and when the nodes moved into Taurus and Scorpio, the true nodes moved into North Node in Taurus. Venus was at that 13th degree of Capricorn retrograde, which happens to be the south node of Pluto. So uh, Pluto, not just the moon has south and north nodes, but all the planets, save the sun save the sun, has a north node and a south node. And so when we're dealing with these outer planets, Pluto, we're dealing with larger sort of um, larger themes over hundreds of years perhaps. But the mere fact that it was at that south node of Pluto says to me that this is a time of letting go of those sort of patriarchal energies as we move into a more, not necessarily matriarchal area, but certainly an area that's more balanced between the masculine and the feminine. And we've been attempting this balance between the masculine and feminine for a long time. Certainly, it started with the suffragettes, right, and then the civil rights in the 60s and abortion rights in the 70s, and now here we stand, where against the will of the majority of the people who the justices don't really represent us necessarily, but they're supposed to be impartial. So they're not supposed to be making these rules based on their religious beliefs, or certainly the original intent of the Constitution, or things from the 15th century. I mean, I don't what the hell is going on here, folks. We'll talk about it. Sorry, my mom, Angelina, who's going to be 102 in August, God willing, and Angelina willing. I know she's willing, but we'll see. Always says, if you're not laughing, you're crying, so you might as well laugh. So I don't want you to think that my outbursts of laughter have anything to do with the lack of seriousness that I take this situation. Anyway, what do we have here? So we have, let's see, we have the sun. Here's the sun here at 19 degrees of Cancer. Oops, here we go, 19 degrees of Cancer. And we have Uranus at 19 degrees of Taurus. It is very close to the north node of the moon. So this is all very much connected to our ability to move in the direction of our values and what's most important to us, what's most essential to us. And Taurus is life. So in a certain way, we can understand while we may not agree with these 15th century, probably past life, as an inquisitor, Alito and his gang, um, um, we can understand that they also are looking at life and from their perspective, however. So we're all trying to kind of figure out what that means for us, and what are our individual rights in relationship to the government and the society that we live in, which is expressed in some of the other things that happened this week. So I'll talk about that as we move forward. So on July 11th, we don't have any major aspects in the sky per se, but we do have the second of 3 Pluto returns for the US chart if we use the Sibley chart. Some people think that the Pluto return is next year. Really, it is a process. We've been going through this process since at least 2017, when Pluto was about 10 degrees away from where it is now. But we have been really kind of going through this process since 2010 or 2008, when Pluto first moved into Capricorn. Pluto was going to, this is the last year Pluto's in Capricorn for the whole year. It does sort of sneak into Aquarius for a little while next year, and then it moves back into Capricorn to finish things off. God knows what that's going to mean. And then it moves into Aquarius for, I think, like 20 years. So we can say bye-bye to Pluto in Capricorn, which has been very transformational when it comes to the structures of power. There's been definitely an accumulation of power in those who have the most power, and have the most money. Once Pluto moves into Aquarius, the dynamic changes a bit, and we can talk about that at a time that we don't have all this to talk about this week, right? So let's take a look. Here we have the United States Sibley chart. It is actually, is this the United States Sibley chart? Oh no, this is the Pluto return chart. My I'm sorry, this is a Pluto return chart. So the Pluto return chart, the second Pluto return. Now remember, the first one occurred back in February. That was right around the time when Russia invaded the Ukraine, and we were dealing with that whole situation and how we get involved with it, and all of that. And of course, Pluto in Capricorn is many things, but one of the things that it is the military industrial complex. So we have to keep that in mind as we sort of move forward. We are now sort of involved in another area of the world. We moved out of the Middle East. We've moved into the Ukraine, not because necessarily we had planned to, although who knows, but because Russia attacked. And I'm not anyway a proponent of any of that, but I'm not sure we know all the reasons behind that. I don't think that, while I think Putin is kind of a crazy, sick man, ex czar in past life, I think there are things about that we don't get the whole story. So I think we just need to be aware that we're shown what they want us to see. That is something that we need to understand. In fact, when 9/11 happened, Pluto was sitting in the third house of media. So media is the message, and media creates the story that they all want us to follow. And we just need to be aware of that, and maybe not trust so much as we trust the information we're getting from the inside out, because the information we get from the inside, from our connection to our divine nature, is much purer and much more inclusive of not just what they want us to know, but it includes what they want us to know to a certain extent and what we're feeling about it. Our feelings, not necessarily our emotions, but our feelings, our gut feelings, our intuitive feelings, you know, what we know to be true in our heart of hearts, that kind of stuff is the stuff that we need to really focus on, while still sort of keeping an eye on what they're saying about it, because there are so many people going by that narrative that it's going to affect our lives one way or another. So we just have to be aware of all that stuff. So this Pluto return has a Sagittarius ascendant. And I'm sorry, I'm having trouble seeing these numbers here. I know maybe you can see them fine. It looks like the moon is at about 24 degrees of Sagittarius. That's right around the galactic center. That's intriguing and interesting, right? And here we have Pluto here in the first house, in this chart. A transformation of how we define ourselves, right? All right, let's see. I don't know what all that noise is. I don't know why that's happening. Anyway, okay, I'm sorry. Here we have the Pluto return sitting on the Sibley chart. We can see Pluto on Pluto. I really apologize. I don't know if you can even hear that noise, but I do apologize for it. Okay, maybe it'll stop. I'm moving my computer around. It might be doing something, I don't know. But a couple things about this chart. We have Mercury sitting right on the sun of the United States. So this is, Mercury is our ability to communicate, right? On the sun of the United States. This is about speaking in a way of who we are. We have Venus here conjunct Mars, Mars in Gemini. This is the division that we're feeling, and we have Venus here as the peacemaker coming to Mars and saying, hey, what are you doing? Like, we need to work in the direction of unity instead of division. And yet we are as divided probably as we've ever been. We're even divided now on what we think to be true. And of course, that was the whole MO, modus operandi of Trump, and what he sort of brought in. And we remember that Trump's sun is right on that Mars of the United States, as is his Uranus and his North Node. So he came in to a certain extent to function as a function of division. And in that's a Gemini energy. Gemini is the Lover's card in the tarot, and the Lover's card is the disposing or separating intelligence, in that we must separate before we can come back together again. And so we are separate, but we need to move together. And one of the ways that we move together is that we connect with people of like mind, and we start working with that. And then once we have a sort of a force with that, we come to sort of embrace the other side. And eventually, I think we're going to come to some sort of balance point. But that, I think, is a few years away, if not decade away. But we'll see. You know, I'm an optimist. I'm always an optimist. All right, what else is going on? Well, Saturn is sitting on the moon of the United States. You can see that here. This indicates that we are having some challenges. The moon in a chart is the people. And it's actually moving off, and it's going to be more exact next year as it goes over the moon of the United States. Once Saturn goes direct, we're going to really we're going to come to a point where perhaps we really like get a sense of reality. We really get a sense of reality. And I think people are going to wake up from this dream fantasy weirdness that we're in, and we're going to be like, oh crap, what happened? And I know, you know, I think we've all been in that situation in our lives. I don't think that we can say that it's you know, just for the Republicans to think, or even the Democrats who thought that they're never going to overturn Roe versus Wade. Well, they did. So I think that there comes a time in everyone's life where the sort of the shades come off the eye, right? Like that's in the Bible. They took the veils off the eyes by putting mud on their eyes, and the veil was lifted. Well, the veil, symbolically is the veil of separation. We are not separate. We are unified, but we're unified at a higher level of consciousness. And as we rise into that higher level of consciousness, it's like moving into a new country. We're not really sure of what to do. So there's a lot of fear associated with that. And people sort of, and what fear does is fear lowers your vibration. And so you come into this sort of lower vibration. Anger actually is a higher vibration than fear. So anger, we can use our anger and our energy, because anger is simply energy that's looking for a place to go, uh, in our ability to move forward. So I definitely think that the second Pluto return brings in the whole theme of the feminine. On Wednesday, the 13th, we have Mercury make a first quarter square to Chiron. This is a crisis in action. Mercury is our ability to communicate. So we're going to talk about the wound. We're going to talk about what we can do about the wound. What kind of actions do we need to take? Now, the wound, Chiron in Aries, is the wound of identity. It's the wound um, of violence. It's the wound of toxic masculinity. It's the wound of guns and things connected to guns and war and all of that. We can't separate what we do out in the world with what's going on in this country. We are at a crisis point here where we have the rights of gun owners over the rights of life. I mean, talk about the right to life, you know, anyway. So there's that Wednesday. This is all happening on the day of the full moon, by the way. So all these themes, right, are like with this full moon. We also have a Venus making a waxing trine to Saturn. Waxing means growing. This has the energy of Leo, so it brings structure, Saturn, to our creative self-expression of our values, Venus. So this is an opportunity for us to maybe speak our truth, speak our understanding, speak our values in a very sort of creative way. We have the full moon in Capricorn, which is awareness of issues around security, authority, parenting, power over, power within, right? Imminence, known as imminence. And we also have Mercury making a sextile to Uranus, opening the lines of communication to your individuated unconscious, Uranus. Mercury and Uranus, Uranus is a higher octave of Mercury. So it acts like Mercury in that it's mentally stimulating. Sometimes mentally like blows your mind. Wow, that's a mind blower. That's Uranus. Okay. But it's in this interactive, communicative energy of searching out information. And some of that information you can actually get from your own individuated, excuse me, unconscious, which within it is the stories of your past lives, and your future possibilities. So there's a lot of access to both the past and the future at the same time, while we try to excuse me, have an awareness about where we stand in the present moment. I just choked on my own spit. I hate when that happens. Okay, hold on, I have some water here. Vodka. No, just kidding, it was really water. Okay, if it was vodka, I'd probably just go bloop. All right, let's talk about this full moon. Why don't we? So we have the, and remember, this is the full moon based on that new moon in Cancer. Do you remember what that new moon in Cancer looked like? It was amazing. And if you want to know more about the new moon in Cancer, you can go back to the last week of June, because I talk about the new moon in Cancer. I believe I also did a card reading with the new moon in Cancer. And Ona and I on Moon Shadows, new moon in Cancer, we did a whole like 1 hour and 26 minutes on that new moon in Cancer. from a different perspective. So if you have some time and you want to go back to that, or you haven't seen it yet, check it out. I think it's definitely worth seeing. So let's look at the Sabian symbols for these for the sun and the moon. Okay, we have the sun at 22 degrees of Cancer. It says a famous singer is providing virtuosity during an operatic performance, the emotional rewards accompanying cultural excellence. It needs to be pointed out with this image that a famous singer providing her virtuosity during operatic performance. That's when people who look like they do things with ease and grace and know, and it's like a natural for them. It's like, oh my God, she's so naturally talented. A lot of that natural talent it starts with natural talent, but it's something that you have to develop. So there's this sense of, yes, you may have this virtuosity, but comes through hard work. And it's opposite the full moon in Capricorn at 22 degrees of Capricorn. Now, I say it harkens back to the 2020 Pluto Saturn conjunction because that occurred at 23 degrees of not exactly this degree, but close enough to feel the energy of that Saturn Pluto conjunction in Capricorn right at the beginning of 2020, right before COVID came down. And did its job on us, which at some point in the future we may see as a blessing, even though it was a terrible situation and we lost a lot of people. Everything on some level will serve us, and what it serves is our awareness. And it's important that we keep an open mind and an open heart in these times, especially in the most difficult of times. So we have Sabian symbol for 22 degrees of Capricorn. By accepting defeat gracefully, a general reveals nobility of character, the realization that one may grow through defeat as well, and perhaps more than through success. And I can't help but think of Roe versus Wade when I look at this symbol. It was overturned. We quote unquote lost. But what is going to come from that loss is something that's bigger, better, a better understanding, and something that can't be overturned, right? Can't be overturned. If we look at this full moon, we have the sun conjunct Mercury here. It is trine the south node. It is sextile the north node. Here we have the moon here, close enough to Pluto to be considered conjunct Pluto. So this is a transformation. It's balsamic to Pluto. So this is about a letting go. Capricorn, perhaps of the patriarchy's right to our bodies. And the sun and Mercury about expressing ourselves. This sun is close to the United States Mercury. We're going to talk a little bit about that a little bit further down this talk. And one thing that I want to point out here. Oh, you can't point it out here. It's fine. I think on the next one. Okay. So this is the two charts. I just want to point a couple of things out. Again, we have the trine between the south node and the moon, sextile to the south node of the moon and the sun, the south node of the moon sextile to the moon trine the north node. So what we have here is a mystical, this is called a mystical triangle. There's a sense of when people have these in their charts, sometimes they have this sense of living in like a world of their very own. Like there can be that energy with this. But we do have connections to these. So while there's this sense of sort of enclosed living in a world of your own kind of energy with this full moon, we still have Saturn squaring the nodes of the moon, which brings reality back. So it's like, yeah, this is the lovely, maybe pseudo-religious sort of mommy and daddy will take care of us kind of energy. And then Saturn in Aquarius is like, wait a minute, mommy and daddy's had all this time to take care of us, and what have they done? We have to work together. We have to work together as equals. It's about, in a way, turning your back on that sort of authoritarian sensibility and moving in a more collective, better for the collective energy. Of course, this the sun of this full moon is in conjunct Saturn. We'll talk about that a little bit because it's more exact as the week goes on. And so Saturn, well, we'll talk about it as the week goes on, but that also needs to be taken note of. Now, if we look to the right here, this is the Sibley chart, Sag rising chart that we use, like 5:10 p.m. on Independence Day, and we'll see where this full moon is falling. Of course, we see the Pluto return here. It just happened, right? Like what, 2 days ago. So it's of course still in orb, and of course it's still returning. I mean, it is not going anywhere. This thing is sitting around here for a couple of years. Here's the south node and the north node of the moon. I want to point out that Mars is square the nodes of the moon of the United States chart. At the time of the insurrection, January 6, 2021, Uranus was square the nodes of the moon. So now we have Mars there. So there's still this energy around rebellion. But with Mars there, it can be there can be some violence. So I want you all to continue to be very careful as you go about your days. The resolution node for this Mars is the south node. We need to go to the past and look at the trauma that we have endured. And when you think about it, the United States is a country of traumatized souls, because most people come here because where they were was too traumatic or too life-threatening to stay. And that continues to be the truth as we see what's going on at the border and all the rest of that. People wanting to come into a place where they might have safety and opportunity. Problem is that safety and opportunity is, I think, sort of is starting to peter out, because it's in the realm of power over dynamic, and we have to stop that because it doesn't work. It just creates more and more chaos on every level and in every country, and the fact that it's even come to America means that it's at the end of its at its rope, because we are the richest and most powerful country. And if it's happening here, it I think punctuates that things have to change, and we have to change. And if we're going to declare ourselves the leader of the free world, we better get our shit together, guys. Otherwise, somebody else is going to take over that. And they probably will anyway, but we don't necessarily want China in its current state of authoritarianism to be the one that takes over, right? This is about working together and becoming more aligned with the feminine. We also have something I want to point out in this chart. We have Chiron opposite Saturn, and Saturn in Libra is the rule of law, right? Everybody talks about the rule of law, but Saturn also is the authoritarian, right? The authority. Excuse me, let me go back. I clicked something I shouldn't have. And Chiron is the wound around your rights to yourself. And this is an awareness around what your responsibility, Saturn, is to society, Libra, and what is your rights as an individual, right? Where do you have to maybe make some concessions? Because we are individual, but we live in a society. And so we can't just have all this individualistic, I'm going to do what the hell I want. without taking into consideration other people around me, that's not going to work. And that's part of the thing that's going away, because it needs to. There's too many people on the planet and we're too much of a crisis not to get along. We have to start getting along. That's a feminine principle. We have to start getting along with the planet. That's a feminine thing. Mother Earth. The earth is our mother. We must take care of her. That is vital. And all of this don't say gay and all this other bullshit crap that the Republicans are spouting, and it's just nonsense. It's nonsense. And we have to see it for what it is. And we have to come back together. And of course, everything that's happening now is going to get us there one way or the other. We might, why don't we just stop and start working on the solutions instead of exacerbating the problems? Thursday, July 14th, we have Venus make a first quarter square to Neptune. First quarter squares are crisis and action squares. Venus and Neptune are a special relationship because Neptune is considered the higher octave of Venus, just like Uranus is considered the higher octave of Mercury. So this is a crisis in action based on the seeds planted at the conjunction. When did that happen? Well, that happened on the 27th of April, and it was at 25 degrees of Pisces. It says a religious organization succeeds in overcoming the corrupting influence of perverted practice and materialized ideals. The power of the soul to intervene in the personal life and to induce necessary catharsis. The key word here is purification. I don't know, this looks an awful lot like religious stuff. It also looks like, because of who's in charge now of the Supreme Court, it also looks like a little Supreme Court stuff here. The interesting thing is, if you look at the chart to the right here, Venus and Neptune and Jupiter, and to a certain extent the moon there, are all conjunct in the house, the seventh house. And this is a chart that I erected for Washington. And the seventh house is a house of law. It's a Venus-ruled house. And Venus in Pisces is in her exaltation. And Neptune in Pisces is in his dignity, or its dignity. It's more of an it than a he. But and so this is a very powerful conjunction. So it is a time of our hearts coming, our heart and our compassion and our needs and our values all coming together. We have to remember also that Venus is the ruler of the North Node, and the North Node in Taurus also, a powerful Venus position, but we have Mercury there on the North Node, if you see that. And of course, Mercury is sitting on the Pluto of the United States. So this is a real struggle for autonomy for women, so we can have a more equal society. We cannot be forced to have children. We cannot be forced to have our rapists and our families' incestual progeny forced upon us in a country where they don't give a shit about kids or women. I'm saying shit a lot. Hopefully I don't get in trouble for it. Don't tell anybody I said it, okay? 6 days later, on May 2nd, Politico published the Alito draft opinion on Roe versus Wade, with 6 justices agreeing to overturn a constitutional right women have had for over 50 years. 50 years. The thing about Neptune is that we don't always know how things are going to work out, because there's always we could call it deceptive nature to Neptune, or certainly a hidden. But Neptune is also associated with mass consciousness. So mass consciousness has something to say about this. We are in this first quarter square of this, and we can see here, we have the first quarter square. Here's Neptune, here's Venus, here's the square. It is, in fact, a chart for the US, and I apologize for only using the US charts this month, this week, but I think it's important for many, many reasons, is a Taurus rising chart, which is Venus ruled. Venus ruled. And we have Neptune here in the 11th house, and we have Venus in its natural house of the second house in Gemini. In Gemini, this is talking, this is discussing, this is information. Venus at 26 degrees of Gemini, frost-covered trees against winter skies, the revelation of archetypical form and essential rhythms of existence. The essential rhythms of existence in a crisis, producing square to Neptune at 26 degrees of Pisces, watching a very thin moon crescent appearing at sunset. Different people realize that the time has come to go ahead with their different projects. A keen appreciation of the value of individualized responses to any challenge in life. So what does this say to me? This says to me, well, first of all, it's a crisis in action square. So action is going to be taken, right? The second thing it speaks to me of is both of these symbols, especially this one with the very thin crescent moon. Crescent moons are always parts of the lunation cycle where we are sort of creating the blueprint for something. It's new beginnings. It's working against escaping the ghosts of the past, the crescent moon phase. And so we are escaping the past as we build the future that we want to see through interaction, compassion, Pisces, communication, Gemini, women coming together, not just women, but people who support women and the rights to their own autonomy coming together. Very, very, very important at this time. On Friday, which incidentally is a day of Venus, the 15th of July, we have Venus in conjunct Pluto. This is a crisis producing and adjusting needing aspect. The need to evaluate your values, Venus, and your desires. There can be a challenge in relationships that are unequal, such as karmic relationships, where one party has the upper hand, Pluto. Internal examination that requires one to change their minds in order to move into a more equal state of relationship. Very, very powerful. Remember, Pluto was on the Pluto of the United States. So all of these aspects are in a way influencing and part of this whole Pluto return of the United States. We have Saturn here on the moon. This indicates control of women. This here indicates control of women. Okay, so there's control issues here, guys. And actually, Mars is almost exactly square the nodes of the moon of the United States at this point. So we can see. I feel like there's going to be a lot of protests, women coming out, people coming out protesting the rights to their own life, and that we have to be especially careful about this because the people with guns don't like this. And it shouldn't stop us, but I think that we need to be very, very circumspect and careful about how we go about this. It's just something to think about, among a million other things to think about. So we come to, there's a lot written here, right? Like, oh, more information, yay. Let me just see, I can't read what I wrote here. So on Saturday, so this is the last day of the week, right? Enough, right? Enough already, no, there's more. On Saturday the 16th, we have Saturn making an inconjunct to the sun. And we have, here's Saturn, here's the sun. This is actually the chart of the conjunction of Mercury and the sun, which happens after Saturn has made an inconjunct to the sun and Saturn has made an inconjunct to Mercury. So the sun and Mercury both have to sort of go through the gauntlet of that inconjunction to Saturn. So what does that mean? Well, Saturn inconjunct the sun quincunx, which is another name for inconjunct, Saturn transit creates an imbalance between what you want and what you have to do. Your freedom or self-expression may be hampered by certain restrictions and or obligations. Mercury in conjunct Saturn, the need to overcome limiting beliefs and fear. Apply yourself consistently with the perspective of knowing what you don't know and striving to figure it out with more information. Okay, so this is a fraught time. This is a fraught time. And then we have the superior conjunction between Mercury and the Sun. Now, what is a superior conjunction? Well, because Mercury and the Sun are so close to each other, the only aspect they can really make, I believe, is the conjunction. And I think that's it. Maybe a semi-square, which is 45 degrees. But and I don't even think so. I think they can only do conjunctions. But there are two types of conjunctions with Mercury and the Sun. One, when Mercury sits between the Sun and the Earth, that's when Mercury is retrograde, when Mercury is closest to the Earth. And when Mercury is on the other side of the Sun, so we have the Earth, we have the Sun, and then we have Mercury on this side. So in a way, it's the closest thing we get to an opposition of the Sun to Mercury. It's actually an opposition of Mercury to the Earth with the Sun in the middle, right? And so we can't see Mercury. Mercury, to a certain extent, is in the hell realms, but sort of on the other side. It's not retrograde, so it's less introspective in its nature. But it is an opportunity for us to have our minds and our being, our integrative beingness together. This occurs at 25 degrees of Cancer, which is important because it is the Mercury of the United States. The Mercury of the United States is at 25 degrees of like 24 something of Cancer, and it is retrograde. So the Mercury for the United States is retrograde in the Sibley chart. 25 degrees of Cancer, a willful man is overshadowed by a descent of superior power. And we just don't say man, say person, say individual, say soul. Okay. Says the response of spiritual forces to the integration of personality through positive, willful endeavors that are full of will. What do you want? What do you want? Do you want power over? Do you want to be in charge of everybody? Do you want to tell people who they are and who they aren't and what they can do and what they can't do? Or do you want to be yourself? Do you want to live your life outside of yourself, or do you want to live your life from inside of yourself? Those people who are trying to tell us when we can't do what we want to do with our own bodies are living outside of themselves. They're more interested in our uterus than they are in their own soul's development. We are dealing with a person who uses their will and positive imagination in facing a life problem. To them comes a Pentecostal descent of power. They receive the mantle of power, the grace, grace, in Sufi philosophy, or the providential assistance, which can make them a true leader in their culture. It says this is the fifth symbol we witness, more transcendent expression of success. It is not merely an external success as given by society to its prima donnas, but a spiritual response to a sign of inner strength and uncommon endowment. This is spirit coming down to empower us as we align with our will to divine will. And that divine will speaks to me of unity. and not power over, and power within, and a realization of our capacity to co-create a new world. The new world is at our fingertips. We have to put our attention where it counts. So where does your attention count? What's most important to you? You need to put it there. If it is in alignment with unity, you have a much better chance of success. But there are those who will put it towards divisiveness, and they will be successful as well. We are the people we're waiting for, and it's time to do what we need to do. Don't be afraid, be aware. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Please like and subscribe. If you would like a reading with me, you can contact me at my website, theseedtotransformation.com. Go to the services page. It tells you what type of readings I do. I will be having a second portion of my Kabbalah class, Introduction to Kabbalah, where we're going to move more into the numerology and the astrology. And the numerology, the astrology, and the tarot. That is, I haven't decided on a date on that, but I will put it up on my community page, and it'll be on my website when I take a look at my schedule. For those of you who like my astrology and like the way I do astrology, you can also join our Tuesday night astrology salon that occurs every Tuesday night from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. You can go on my website. There's an option to take a single class. The only thing I would say is you need to have somewhat of a basic understanding of astrology so you don't get lost in the class. It is not an instructive class where necessarily you say, well, what does Saturn square the sun mean? You kind of have to have a view of an idea of that. Although if you ask me, I'll tell you. We'll say, you don't know, I'm not telling you. It is a learning experience. So, but it's mostly so we can discuss things, especially the stuff that's happening now in sort of an astrological forum. So if you'd like to join us for that, there is a single option on my services page. All right, guys, take care. See you next week. Much love. Stay safe, stay whole, stay full of light. Shine your light, shine your light, shine your light. It's working. I don't know if sometimes you don't feel like it's working, but believe me, it's working and it will work. Much love, everyone. Take care.